Welcome, everyone. I'm Wake of Sacred Pathways, your host today for Shaman to Shaman, where we bring you interviews, shaman to shaman, healer to healer, teacher to teacher, with shamanic, earth-based healers and teachers from around the world. As you listen, our hope is that the courage, beauty, and wisdom expressed in these offerings and the unique approaches to addressing individual, community, and global transformation will inspire you to add shamanic healing and exploration to your overall routine of well-being. That you think first of the shaman within you and what skilled shamanic support will enhance your own balance, vitality, and offerings of your gifts to the world. Shaman to Shaman is brought to you by Shamans Directory. To learn more about us, you can visit online at shamansdirectory.com, on YouTube, and through social media at Shamans Directory. Today, I'm honored and delighted to welcome MacKinnon of Shamanic Voyages, an accomplished drummer and drum maker, to share his journey and current practice with us. Crow, welcome to the Shaman to Shaman interview.
Good morning, Wake. Thank you.
And let's begin with your name. I think it's an engaging name. You've got an archetype behind you. I wonder if you'd begin by telling us about your name and how it influences you.
Well, there's a lot of layers to that, but probably the most significant is back in 1975, 76, I did a student teaching at the Institute of American Indian Arts. And that was the first time I had an opportunity to actually sit in a medicine ceremony with Native people. I had my first experience of merging with the spirit animal, and it happened to be the crow. And that was how I was referred to shortly thereafter by them. And it stuck over the years, more with some people than others. But in my later years, when I've focused much more on my spiritual path, I find that that aspect of me is more to the forefront. So, a lot of people will refer to me that way. I don't have a particular preference. You can call me whatever you like, as long as you don't call me late for dinner, as they say.
How about in your community, Crow? How are you perceived? What are you called in your shamanic community?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. Recently, I wrote a little opinion piece for Indie Shaman magazine, and it was all about what we call ourselves. And I've given this a lot of thought, like a lot of people have. And what feels best to me is calling myself a medicine person, because that is how I view myself. I am first and foremost an animist, and the understanding that all things are imbued with spirit really gives focus to my work and my daily existence. So that kind of sums up the basics. Obviously, shaman is a created term created by anthropologists to describe a certain type of practice, largely in indigenous cultures. And I believe that using it fairly freely is okay, but calling oneself a shaman oftentimes does sound a little bit like a judge calling himself my honor. So I think it's a good honorific to use with others who are engaged in medicine work.
Well, I certainly like the term medicine person. That shows that there's some depth to what you have to offer. I want to revisit the name Crow and just ask you what kind of qualities exist in that name for you. What have you discovered in your journeying with the identity of Crow?
Well, a good deal of the traditional interpretations of what Crow medicine is seem to sit well with me, and I can identify with them. But largely, my deepest connection to it is because the crows are the the primary spirit animals that I work with. When I do my journey work or healing work, they are generally almost inseparable from my self-awareness and journeys. I work with other spirit animals as well, but the most reliable and deepest connection I have is with the spirit of the crow or crow spirit. There's something about people who have crow medicine that we recognize one another. We oftentimes do gravitate toward one another, and it's not a terribly uncommon medicine to be associated with.
And just a little bit more deeply, how would you describe crow medicine?
Well, the crow is often identified as being the one who, or one of the spirits that easily transmits itself back and forth beyond the veil. Crow medicine people generally are seldom in one place, if you will. That it kind of in both worlds simultaneously. There are a lot of different cultures that interpret crow medicine in different ways. I'm very interested in what other cultures do, but my own experience is what I put most stock in. And whenever I see crows in the wild, I greet them and I feel a sincere and deep connection to them.
Well, I appreciate that description of being in both worlds. That describes the shaman in a certain way, doesn't it?
Indeed, yeah. Yeah.
Or the medicine person. Let's go back then, Crow, to your earlier years of what attracted you to the medicine path and in the first place, and perhaps you could describe some of your training or early experiences with the medicine way.
Well, I think like a lot of people who are attracted to this, we were somewhat different from the start. That tendency to be in both worlds was something that described me as a young child. Back before they would use the term ADD freely, I was referred to as a daydreamer, and unfortunately, that was not considered to be a strength when I was young. But as I got older, I drew a lot of inspiration and oftentimes very useful knowledge from that ability to be elsewhere. I think inspiration is a word that really describes it because it's rooted in the word spirit. And when I would be in another world, oftentimes I would come back with very creative solutions to problems, or that's where I felt I'm inspired to artwork or writing. And oftentimes also when I'm engaged with people talking about difficulties and challenges that they may have, very often I feel that I have an access to other knowledge beyond what I have accumulated in ordinary reality.
So I think you're right, Crow, when you say that that some people experience this because it sounds like you had daydreams, you had the ability to be elsewhere, you recognized that, and then you found some foundations to support that. Tell us about your early training in the medicine arts.
Well, the earliest training I had was self-education. I was attracted to the subject. I read widely. I had a reputed connection to indigenous people through bloodlines. I didn't have the cultural influence in my upbringing. I was raised pretty, in a pretty common East Coast, middle class way. But I definitely explored a great deal about indigenous practices, particularly Dene or the Navajo, and of course, like a lot of people, I was inspired by the early writings of Carlos Castaneda, and I was a spiritual seeker. I read a lot about a lot of other spiritual traditions, and I kind of boiled things down to the point where I just really had a deep sense that animism was really what rang the truest for me. So when I had my first child, I dialed back my spiritual seeking in order to do a little more, ordinary reality, responsible living. And as my son got older, we did a vision quest when he was 13 years old in a sweat lodge that I had built. I kind of, the pendulum swung back and forth. I was able to learn, from many people, eventually discovering Michael Harner and the way of the shaman. And Mr. Harner really put a really good spin on shamanism for me. I found a whole treasure trove of things to read and practices to use that really helped to solidify this practice and kind of give it a direction, because I didn't really call it anything before. But becoming a shamanic practitioner felt okay. It didn't sound like too much of a reach for me. And shortly, I'm always gray in this area, whether Michael Harner or Don Augustine came first. It was around the same time. I made a trip to Peru and started working with an Amazonian shaman down there, Don Agustin Rivas Vasquez. The way I got onto his trail was after reading a book called Dance of the Four Winds by Alberto Villoldo. In the Dance of the Four Winds, Alberto talks about learning from Don Ramon Sanchez in Pucallpa and having his first ayahuasca experience. And one of Don Ramon's other students was Don Agustin. So in this group of men that I was involved in sweat lodges with, we decided, or one of us decided to follow up on that. And he discovered a way to get a hold of Don Agustin. Don Ramon had retired at that point in time. And he went down and visited Don Agustin at his camp with a small group. And when he came back, our first sweat lodge, he said, "You guys have to come." I relate this story, and I believe you may have read the story about the Treasure of the Amazon that I wrote for Indie Shaman. That kind of recounts this experience of first working with Don Agustin. And that was a life-changing event. That changed my medicine walk from being one of a deep interest to one of being fully immersed in. And my identity became inseparable from my medicine walk at that point in time.
Well, that led eventually to the creation of Shamanic Voyages, which you're still deeply involved in to this day, leading trips to both the rainforest and to the Andes. Tell us something about Shamanic Voyages and what that's all about.
Well, as you noted, my experience with Don Agustin in the Amazon really planted the seed and was the inspiration for Shamanic Voyages. I always wanted to do that, but it took me many years to finally get around to it. In later years, probably right around 2015 or 16, I started to focus more on the shamanic work. And actually, I happened to go to a talk that Alberto was giving. It was kind of like I was ready to get more involved in shamanism. I was winding down my business and so forth, and I listened to Alberto speak, and we had a chat afterwards because of our common connection to Don Ramon and Don Agustin, and it really inspired me to go back and get more formal training. So what I did is I took a 2-week intensive training offered by the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, Michael Harner's group. And then that was followed shortly thereafter by the 3-year advanced training program. And it was while engaged in that another student and I decided that we would just take a stab at seeing who wanted to go to Mongolia and pull together a trip specifically to discover a shamanic culture that was not not really connected to the one we were in, to kind of broaden our knowledge. And that first trip was the inception of Shamanic Voyages as a formal entity. Either just before or just after that trip, I formed a nonprofit corporation, Shamanic Voyages. And the intention for Shamanic Voyages is to be an educational nonprofit that offers spiritual retreats where people have an opportunity to learn about cultures where shamanism is still very relevant and being practiced. So Mongolia was a great place to start because shamanism in Mongolia really exploded after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the reemergence of this very strong tradition that they had for so long that was finally being able to resurge. And we met some wonderful people, and it just really got my appetite whetted to continue to do this, but in the home of my heart, which is Peru. I worked with friends that I had in Peru to develop an itinerary, and actually one of the people who was on the Mongolia trip came and was part of that trip as well as someone who was in the 3-year program. And it was our first one. We basically were finding our feet into how to develop an itinerary that truly was educational, which is hard to do in the Andes because the Andes is just so overwhelmingly beautiful that it's very easy just to become a tourist. But we did work in ceremonies with shamans or altamosaics and medicine people in Peru from fairly different traditions, a little bit different backgrounds, to get a sense of the way that they practiced. We began to get some of the history of the Incas and the culture and how shamanic practice was a very integral part of that very successful culture. And also, learned from particularly one shaman there, altamosaic, Don Carlos Anibal Muriel, about the pre-Inca culture and how much of the spiritual tradition is lost in the mists of time, and that from one colonization to another, there has been a thread of spiritual practice that has persisted and it has predated the Inca and survived the Inca, predated the Spanish colonization and continues even today. It was really beautiful.
Crow, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what's the experience like actually putting your feet on the ground of the trails of Peru, the land, to actually experience the mountains and the culture. What is it like to actually go there? What would you say to someone who hasn't yet visited?
Well, I'd like to answer that as a two-pronged answer because it comes to me that way. As an individual, when I first went down there to scout these trips and so forth, a lot of times when I actually got to touch the deep history, to touch a wall or something like that, there was a familiarity and a connectedness that I felt that was overwhelming. Now, as far as inviting other people and sharing the experience with other people, that's somewhat different. I clearly am using what I've learned and what the way that my individual experience has affected me in sharing these places and these experiences with other people. But also, I am very inspired by watching someone else catch that magic. When I see people connecting and I see them having that aha moment, that just fuels me. And that's really why I do this. It would be far simpler to go travel myself and only be responsible for myself. But sharing this experience with other people really is, I guess it makes me feel like I found my calling. because I really, really enjoy watching how well people connect with the experience and carry it on to other people. I think on the website, which I wrote a really long time ago, I have something like a mission or a vision in there, and it's about sharing practices with other cultures and discovering the commonalities as well as the differences. And that really gives a sense of fraternity with other medicine people, because so far I've had the great good fortune of finding people who are very interested in learning things about outside their culture as well. So it's a really a collaborative sharing experience, and involving other people in that as it's happening is just very, very rewarding.
And I know, Crow, that one of your deep passions or callings is to visit yourself and to bring people to the rainforest.
Yes.
Um, what about that part of Shamanic Voyages?
Well, that part is the part that is closest to my heart. Um, from the first trip, when I began working with Don Augustine, well, just to back up a little, give you a little bit of a story. Don Augustine's granddaughter, Artie, was there. She was 10 years old at the time. And somehow she took a shine to me. She was a wonderful, wonderful little girl. And she was there in the camp as our group was doing the work. And she said that my father is coming to visit, and you two will be great friends. Well, there was a prophetic statement, because her father is Viejo, or Augustine Jr., who was known better as Viejo. He and I became very, very close. We shared a vision in real time as we were standing outside in the jungle after a ceremony. And on my subsequent visits to Peru, I spent a good deal of time visiting him and staying with his family. And it wasn't just about shamanic work. It was about being welcomed into a family. It was very touching. So we developed a friendship that was deep enough where we refer to one another as brothers.
Mm.
And today, when I take groups to the Amazon, we work primarily with Viejo. Don Agustin now is 98 years old. He still does work, but primarily in the company of his partner, Milena Soto, who is also a shaman. But he is getting on in years. His eyesight is failing, and he's moved to a different level. Viejo and I have been working closely together for some time, and we continue to. At present, March is my month where I'll take a group down. Sometimes it'll be a couple times in a year if circumstances permit. But that's a good time of year for a lot of people. It's after the holidays, before they have to get into the summer and everything. They get a little bit of time to really do this work. It is easy to stay fresh for me. So there are fundamentals that you have to go over at the beginning of every trip. But I do oftentimes have people who are returning for a second, third time. I've one who's one of the board members in Shamanic Voyages now, who will be going back to the jungle for the fourth time with me. So it's a very moving experience for most of the people who go there.
Well, I believe you've called it a pilgrimage, really, for people. And just could you give a little context about what might somebody expect to experience, or some of the logistics of going down to the rainforest with you?
Largely, the rainforest trip is about working with jungle medicines. Now, I realize that a lot of celebrities have really popularized ayahuasca, and there are ceremonies that you can go to in the United States or Europe and so forth. But I really feel to honor the medicine you really need to go where the medicine is home. You know, we're being welcomed into her home. We're not tearing her away. And the way that we operate our trips is that we prepare before leaving with a diet, where traditionally there are certain types of foods that are avoided. Some for physical reasons, because it'll make it easier for you physically to enter this experience, and some for spiritual reasons. Oftentimes, when people begin a pilgrimage, they begin by fasting. And that's part of why we have our pre-trip fast. The focus that you bring and the intention that you bring to this experience is largely going to determine how successful and rewarding it's going to be for you. You know, as the old adage says, you get out of it directly in proportion from what you put into it. So we invite and encourage people to prepare ahead. When we first arrive, we spend a day in Iquitos to just kind of pause in the culture. And then we head upriver for our first day in the camp, and we're welcomed with an herbal bath. The herbal bath is made from medicinal and aromatic plants right from the direct environment, and it's poured over us. And the purpose of this is for us to change our scent and to, in a way, be physically altered by the environment itself. Some of the herbs there are medicines that we'll be working with in greater depth later. But that first ceremony is really like a welcoming. And then that first evening, we have what's called a huitol ceremony. Now, huitol is a small nut. It's about the size of a walnut, and almost the same appearance too. It's got a thick skin on it. And you grate it down into a pan and add a little bit of water and mix it up, and then apply it to your skin. It's clear when you apply it, but there's a reaction that takes place over the next several hours where your skin is turned deep blue-black. Oftentimes you'll see pictures of indigenous people in, dog, in the Amazon that will have decorations. Sometimes they look like tattoos. Oftentimes that's huitol that's being applied. It's not like henna that will wash off. This actually will dye your skin, and it'll take probably about 9 or 10 days before it comes off. Now, the reason that we put it on our skin, and this is from Don Augustine's first teaching, is that we put it on our hands and face primarily. And that is because that is the place where our 5 primary senses are located. You have sight, you have hearing, you have smell, you have taste, and you have touch. And what happens is when you dye your skin, it will concentrate the energies of the jungle to those 5 primary senses. Now, in addition to that, if you wish, you can do your whole body. The physical appearance also kind of identifies you as being a member of a group. Okay, we are the pilgrims. We are kind of unified in a tribe, and the visual representation that shows that the commitment to that connection. So those are the first 2 ceremonies on the first day. The second day is the purification ceremony of Ohe, and Ohe is a purgative that is used commonly by the people in the jungle for parasites, and much like a wide spectrum antibiotic as well. It really fights a lot of infections, but parasites are the primary one because the healing is instant. Now, this Ohe is not delicious. In fact, it's quite difficult to drink. It does not taste good at all. And it's very caustic. So you have to drink bowl after bowl of warm water after you drink the ohe to keep it from burning your digestive tract. If you drink the water and you follow directions, there's no danger, but you have to follow directions. This will result in a purging of your entire digestive tract, vomiting, diarrhea, other, traditionally unpleasant experiences. But because we're doing it with the intention of purifying ourselves for the upcoming ceremonies, and in some ways also offering up our discomfort for the purpose of enlightenment, it is a sacred ceremony, and I don't want to minimize it in any way at all. A lot of people don't really like it, and it's the part they want to forget. It's like fasting in some ways. It's intentionally putting yourself in a place of discomfort for the purpose of being enlightened. And this type of thing, much like fasts or vision quests, does attract the compassion of the spirits. And this is also an additional reason behind this ceremony.
Well, it sounds, Crow, like this whole experience is well explained and well guided and accompanied. I don't think anybody would want to go down to the jungle with without the intentionality that you bring to it, and without the experience and the guidance that's available there. It feels like you're really taking a comprehensive approach in receiving the gifts of the rainforest. I believe that's one of your focuses, to really support the pilgrim or the journeyer in a meaningful way.
Absolutely. There are people who go on hallucinogenic vacations and don't approach it with the same kind of respect, and their results are very different. By approaching it as a pilgrimage and as a spiritual retreat, it is a very, very different experience. I also like to incorporate some core shamanic practices as well that really weren't part of what Don Agustin did, or Viejo even, but doing a traditional drum journey both inside and outside of the ayahuasca ceremony environment also helps to maintain that posture of being engaged in a sacred time. So we fill our time very, very well. We're there for roughly 2 weeks, and usually the average trip will have 3 ayahuasca ceremonies, but there will be other ways that we fill the time that really give people an opportunity to work on the intention that they brought to the journey at the beginning.
Crow, you've mentioned repeat customers, those who come back and really are drawn to the experience and the way you guide and support it. If I were to be a first-time participant, what is your sense of when it's appropriate to go down to the rainforest, if you can put it in these terms, to take such a journey?
Well, in doing an interview with people who say they would like to come, I almost always hear the same words or very similar words to, I feel called to this. I really feel drawn to this. That, as opposed to, I'm interested. That sounds cool. There are other ways that people might be excited to go. But what I've found is that the people, and I feel very lucky here, the people who've come to join my trips generally are really seeking something, and they feel drawn to this, and that feeling remains even once I describe to them some of the depredations that they may experience on this trip. This is not by any means a vacation. There may be moments where you can take a walk in the jungle or lay in the sun and relax and so forth. But for the most part, it's work. And it's not just working on yourself either, because there have been people who've come that knew they needed to do some work and then discovered that the work was much larger than they originally imagined. I've seen a tremendous change in so many people. I've seen people who were angry people become free of that anger that drives them. I've seen people who have a long history of PTSD actually find a quiet place and a connection that they didn't have before. People who suffer from depression or alcoholism. There was one person that I knew who really had a struggle with his addiction, and one experience in the jungle led him to an awareness that he had another path that was free of alcohol, and he just never picked up a drink again. Wasn't interested in picking up a drink again. And having worked with other people with substance issues in the past, it really struck me how successful and total the change was in him. I've met people who have gone into remission for cancer, after one experience in the jungle. And we have one fellow on our trip now who is he's cancer free, but he is going to continue his recovery and to bring a new life to his post cancer. But he's very excited about this. And this is a gentleman who had gone, many years ago, 30 years ago or so, and hasn't been there since. So he's not walking into it not knowing, but he's bringing a very well-defined intention. And that's what I really like to see people do when they come on these trips, is to have the work.
Well, Crow, then, if someone feels the call to work with you, to go to the jungle, what's the first step?
Well, ideally, the first step is to get in touch and ask, what do you recommend that I learn beforehand? There are a number of articles, books, videos that you can watch that will kind of give you a little bit of a grounding in it. For Westerners, that's important because this isn't part of our culture like it is down there. Down there, most of the native people pretty much know what to expect. There's a normalcy about it. It's not at all exotic to them. For Westerners, a lot of them don't really understand spirits, unless they're involved in shamanism or something already. The awareness that everything has a spirit and all spirits are of equal value, and that at some level, all spirits can interact. These are things that, aren't part of our culture, but are part of the culture down there. And these are things that you will experience when you're down there if you open yourself to that.
And is it appropriate to have a personal contact via social media or a phone consultation with you to see if there might be a fit?
I prefer to do an interview with people individually. This trip, I had somebody who signed on like the day after the deadline, so we didn't have the chance to do a lot of that. But I know that there's another shaman that this person works with. I know her very well in Germany, and know that he comes well recommended. So there's that. Yes, like I said before, you get out of it what you put into it, and the more that you prepare yourself ahead of time, the more fully you can embrace the experience when you get there. Every sane person is going to bring some level of trepidation to this experience because it is not a cakewalk. One of the things I like to do, aside from let people know what's coming, is also to let them know how well they are going to be supported there. Viejo and Nina and myself, and to some degree, some of the other people who work in the camps, we have a very well honed skill to detect when people are in distress. And if that's the case, we know how to respond to that. That is very important, that people know that they're going to be supported, that they know that we are going to have our eyes on them and we're going to keep them safe, and that we're not going to just cut them loose after they've had the experience, trying to pull it together for themselves. After every ceremony, we have a debrief. People share their experiences. They can ask the questions that they were left with, and hopefully receive useful answers. And they also get the opportunity to listen to other people share their experience, which can really enhance, what they themselves had just, been through. So that's, those are the reasons I really like to do, some, preparatory work before, going down there. And another important aspect is at the very end, reviewing what was your intention. Did you feel that you made inroads to accomplishing what you set out to do? What remains? What do you feel is your next steps? Questions like that. So each individual who's part of the group has an opportunity to speak with Viejo, Nina, and myself before they leave, and they have the confidence that what they say will be held, just in that room and not shared with anyone else. And they can speak as freely as they need to. So these are all things that I think are really important to offer in this type of retreat. There are other retreats out there with varying levels of support and comfort. We score high on the support part, maybe a little bit lower in the comfort part, because it is like summer camp. It's not super comfortable. Some people who choose to be on a dieta or sign a dieta will continue a fairly strict diet for a good portion of the time they're there. That's another whole discussion and another whole experience as well. I don't know. I've never had anybody complaining for lack of comfort, but we're out there a little bit, and we hope to go even deeper into the jungle in the coming years. We're trying to rebuild Viejo's camp that's further away from town.
Well, Crow, I'm so pleased that you're willing to share some of the intensity and some of the experience of voyage or a pilgrimage like this, and it feels really like a well-supported immersion, not only into the plant medicine but into the jungle and rainforest itself. I wonder if we might spend a few minutes talking about one of the other passions I'm aware of, and you've mentioned it in our discussion so far, and that is the drumming aspect and drum making. I understand that if someone was interested in learning more about drumming or crafting their own drum, that you could help in that regard.
Yes, I love bringing drums into the world, and I love sharing that experience. The drum, I worked with the drum before I met Michael Harner, but Michael Harner really instilled a real appreciation for the power of the drum, not just as a spiritual tool, but also a little bit of the science behind it. Sonic driving at the range of around 4.5 hertz does induce people to go into a theta wave brain state. And that is similar to a dreaming state, but you're awake during the drumming. So this is a really good way to have the shamanic journey experience with sonic driving. So I love to talk about that with people as they're building their drums. They get to know that there is an ordinary reality aspect and a non-ordinary reality aspect to their relationship with the drum. Making it in a sacred way being very mindful and honoring of the creatures, both plant and animal, that have made a sacrifice to become this new thing, is important. We use sage to purify the physical environment when we're doing it, and we actually do a few journeys. If people haven't done drum journeys before, they have an opportunity to actually do some drum journey work during this workshop, which is generally a weekend. We make the drum on the first day. The second day, if environmental conditions are good, people will be able to hear the voice of their drum the next day. If it's really damp, they might have to take it home a little bit flat, but they generally will come into their voice in a short time.
I understand that's another aha moment for you, Crow.
Oh, I love the drum workshops, particularly when you see the skeptic uh, um, get it. The people who think that not necessarily isn't this going to happen, but more often, I don't know if this will happen for me. I'm not very good at visualizing. Sometimes the first journey they try, it doesn't really work that well for them. They don't see anything. They might be hoping for something and getting something different. But almost without fail, before the workshop is over, people come back with something that surprises even them, and they realize that yes, they can access a mental spiritual state through drumming that they have not experienced before. Oftentimes, people who come to these are already seasoned drummers, and they are there mostly so they can develop a personal relationship with their drum, to be the ones whose hands have crafted it themselves, and all of that. I just love seeing people's responses. The aha moment is just a wonderful thing to share. In fact, last summer we had 2 9-year-old boys come to a drum making workshop, and even I had, wondered about the journey aspect of it, with people so young. But both of them came back with very significant journeys, and made wonderful drums, to boot.
Well, I'm wondering, Crow, in terms of developing one's own personal medicine, is drumming an essential part? Is that important? Can you be a medicine person without a drum, or is it essential in some way to developing one's own personal relationship with the natural world?
I wouldn't want to use the word as absolute as essential, but almost. The drumming through sonic driving, or not drumming, but journeying through sonic driving, can also be done with a rattle. It can be done by hitting 2 sticks together. These are cultural practices that people have. There are times when I find myself inclined to do a quick journey, and I just tap my sternum at the same shamanic cadence. So it is not essential, but it is certainly a very reliable doorway into non-ordinary reality. Much like the medicine is for some people, the drumming is not used at all by some people who work with medicines. There are many different doorways: prayer, repetition, mantras. These are all things that share some aspect with sonic driving because of the repetition, and breaking through the veil into non-ordinary reality. So I hesitate to use the word essential, but absolutely valuable. Yes.
Thank you. And Crow, is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with?
Well, boy,
Ah,
prepare me for that one.
you
Well,
spoke eloquently. no matter what the subject. And I really like your focus on the training, on the medicine, on people finding their own way of pursuing their medicine path, and you having a particular emphasis in the jungle and the voyages that you lead and support to bring people to true experience. I think is amazing, and it needn't be anything profound, but it will be impactful for people. Is there a message from your practice? Is there a message or a statement that you think would be of value at this point in time?
Well, yes. Probably the most important thing that I've learned in my medicine walk is the importance of the other. It's very easy to feel powerful, but it's not us that does the healing. It's the community. It's the spirits, and I know that I need to be very careful about using my ego in a productive way, because it's very easy, if you are paying too close attention to yourself, to not hear the voice of the other. And the other is where the learning is. I already know what I know. It's outside myself where further knowledge exists. And so, to boil that down, be mindful of the other, or the voice of the other.
Thank you so much, Crow. And as we close, I know that you've been an important part of Shamans Directory in its formation, in its support. You're an ambassador to Shamans Directory. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with the organization itself and what you feel is the value of the vision, one fire, one medicine.
Well, the existence of Shamans Directory was serendipitous. I just happened to see the words on a post on social media, and it stuck with me. And I thought, I want to. There's something here, that I was attracted to. So I got in touch with, I think it was Trish. Via social media, and I explained a little bit of what I did and asked, if there was some way that we could work together. This idea and this vision that was put forth is one that I can fully support, and I really one of the things I admire most about it is that it's not. It doesn't have its foundation in some specific training program or cultural practice. It is truly, I'll use the word democratic, for lack of a better one, and inclusive. And it kind of echoes some of the vision that I have in my undertakings, and I wanted to be involved. So I met with the founders on a Zoom meeting, and we talked a little bit. And I said, well, how can I help you? Because I really wanted to see them succeed. And they have also, they have contacted other people who are helping as well. And some people are offering great free programs. And I have really encouraged everyone that I know that is either a practitioner or a cultural shaman to try to become involved. The only stumbling block I've seen so far has been one of language, and that's being worked on. My understanding is that there will be a Spanish version of the page available very soon, and for me that's important because many of the medicine people I work with are native Spanish speakers, and I expect in time it will branch out even more. But the one fire is very reminiscent of a lot of other prophecies or just obvious directions that many people know that we need to go in as a culture or as a species in order to survive and flourish, because we're in troubling times right now.
And what about the aspect of Shamans Directory in letting the medicine people get to know one another and bringing themselves together in a meaningful way?
That is at the core of what I love most about it, because that's what what I'm trying to dedicate myself to as well. Um, the more that we share and recognize our commonalities, as well as our differences, the closer that we become as a spiritual family or spiritual community. And spiritual community is extremely important and very, very powerful. The power of coming together to work for healing or to reestablish harmony or a balance where it's been lost is just so much more effective than struggling to do it just by yourself. You know, good intentions are good intentions, but when they're joined with other people's good intentions, they become a force.
That's beautiful. It's been a delight to get to know you in this way. I'm sure those who are watching the program will be inspired by your integrity, your sincerity, and what support you offer for very important experiences. Not only the voyages, where you get to really be immersed in the environments that you've chosen, but also in the drumming, and to bring that power to your everyday practices. So I so appreciate your willingness to share your medicine, to join Shamans Directory, to contribute in the way that you do, and to be available to bring the medicine further into the fire and let it grow. On behalf then of Shamans Directory, I want to thank you, Crow, for your deep participation. I want to thank you, viewers, for your participation in this session of Shaman to Shaman. We hope you've been inspired. I certainly have. And if you'd like to schedule a journey, make a drum, or have an inquiry for Crow MacKinnon, or learn more about other amazing healers and teachers who have chosen to join Shamans Directory, please visit us at shamansdirectory.com. Until next time, this is Wake. Thank you for watching our program, for living your sacred life, and for walking your sacred pathway.
Thank you.